So here we are just north of Hollywood, California, and we're at the home and studio of Scott Brake, and joined with Scott and Cookie. It's great to see you again, Scott.
You as well, Cookie. Can't you say hi? Are you going to be antisocial? You're not going to say anything? Okay, I understand. That's okay. It's good to have you here. It's great. It's great to see you again. Was it 2 years?
2 years.
Yeah.
We met 2 years ago, oh. Voice 2010, and again this year, Voice 2012.
Yeah, exactly. Nice to have you. Welcome to the house.
Thank you. It's a beautiful house, and it's kind of funny. It feels like a Hollywood house, which is cool. But it's funny that you're right in the middle of the film industry, and you're the audiobook guy.
I know. I'm almost across the street from Universal Studios. I actually live on the street where Eight Is Enough was filmed. All the exteriors were Eight Is Enough were filmed just down the street from me. And all these movies and TV shows are in production around me, and I'm downstairs in my studio recording audiobooks. It's kind of a nice change of pace.
That's cool. Scott, just before we talk about some of your more current projects and your current work, can I throw you back before you ever got behind a microphone or before you ever got into a studio? What the heck got you started? Got some sort of bug in you to do this?
At some point in my youth, in my childhood, people would notice. I think it was the fact that I told jokes so often, and I actually think that's a valuable skill to learn. I always tell my students, learn to tell jokes because it really helps with storytelling. Because you got a beginning, a middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. And I think if you can do it on the small micro level, you can do it on the macro level as well. And I did it constantly when I was a kid. And anytime I had a chance at a captive audience, and I had a good story that I knew I could, affect them with, I took it. I was always the kid who would tell ghost stories around the fire at camp. Uh-huh. I'm passionate about storytelling. I always have been. That's why I became an actor. I think to one extent or another, anybody who works in the entertainment industry, we do this because we want to tell stories. Mm-hmm. And whether you're a cinematographer or a set designer or a makeup technician, I mean, we're all telling stories. With audiobooks, it turns out that this is kind of the most pure form of that. And I think it was the fact that I was a storyteller as a kid, plus the fact that I just read voraciously, passionate about books. I think, I didn't spend my youth thinking, boy, if only I could do audiobooks one day. And yet, by the time I got here, I realized that all of those skills definitely helped me along the way.
Okay, so were you involved in theatre at the school, mm-hmm. or?
Yeah, I got involved in theatre. I guess my freshman year of high school, and I did it just for fun. But my intention was to be a comic book artist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was going to be a graphic artist, and when I got to be a senior in high school, I moved to Huntington Beach, a couple hours from where I had been living, and we had a terrific theater teacher named Mike Frim, and he had a tour where he would take some of his students to Broadway. And we would, in a week, we'd see 8 or 10 Broadway shows. Mm-hmm. And he encouraged me to take this trip, encouraged me to a great extent. He went out and met my parents, he met my family, encouraged everybody. When I told him I couldn't afford the trip, he convinced my family to give it to me for Christmas that year.
Fantastic.
And I didn't know why until finally we got to New York. It was December 1982, and Cats had just opened, so we were literally in the theater watching Cats in the Winter Garden Theater in New York. And at intermission, they allow you to come up on stage. Mm-hmm. And he, as everybody's running up to the stage, Mike just kind of nudged me with his elbow and says, "Come on." So I follow him up there, and he takes me down stage center in this Broadway theater, puts his arm around my shoulder, and with the other arm gestures dramatically out at the crowd, and he says, "This is what I wanted you to come to New York to see. I wanted you to see what life was like from this perspective."
You've just given me goosebumps.
Well, it was one of those moments. It was a goosebump moment, and I realized at that moment, my life is different now. My life changes from everything before now his prelude, his
Okay.
prologue. From this point on, my life is different. Right at that moment, my entire life shifted. I said, I'm not going to be an artist. I'll be an actor. And I didn't really see myself as having the talent, the ability, anything really all that special. But I trusted that Mike saw what I didn't, and I said, I'll trust the third eye that I can't quite provide the situation myself. So it's been different ever since then.
So it's great that you had some milestones in your mind like that, and somebody like Mike who showed you the way.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
That's very cool. And so you continued with theatre.
I continued with theater. I toured with the Shakespeare Company on and off for about 10 years. It was called Will and Company. We would do hour-long versions of maybe about a dozen of Shakespeare's plays or other classics. Mm-hmm. And
I saw Shakespeare for Dummies on your bookshelf. So.
Yes, you did, absolutely. I did stage work and whatever film or TV roles I could get, even a couple of voiceover jobs, although I wasn't really pursuing it. But then about 10 years after I left college, I was playing baseball with an old friend of mine, Bob Westall. There was a bunch of us who had all gone to UCLA together, and we would get together every Saturday morning and play baseball. Mm-hmm. And Bob happened to work for Dove Audio, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. But while he was there, he'd seen me in a number of my stage productions and told him I would be good, got me an audition. I booked my first job. And while I was there, doing my first 2 short stories, Dan Musselman was there. It was his last day on my first day. Dan was leaving Books on Tape. He was leaving Dove Audio to go build a studio for Books on Tape and become their executive producer. Mm-hmm. And so as I was coming in, he was on his way out and gave me his card, said, I'm going to have my own place. I'm going to need my own narrations in about a month. Why don't you give me a call? And, I think by the time Dove went out of business about a year later, and I think I'd done maybe 8 jobs for them. In the 12 years since that happened, I've done maybe 350 for Dan. I wonder, I think I've done about 600 audiobooks altogether, but about 350 or around about there were just for Dan alone. Books on Tape, Random House Audio. I wonder what my life would be like every day. Uh-huh. And I found his card recently. I have it over here. I was cleaning out my garage, and there was all these old magazines.
It was in a special place in the garage.
Yeah, yes. Right, exactly. I honestly have no idea how it wound up getting into that box, because it was just a magazine that I used to write for. And somebody gave me these 2 boxes, and they said, some of your issues might be in here. And I held on to it for years, and I don't know why I did that. I finally just said, I need the space. And so and I almost just chucked the 2 boxes. But instead, I went through issue by issue, pulling them out, throwing them in the recycling bin. And ink stains all over my hand, and, finally I get 2 issues from the bottom of the box, and there's a business card, upside down. And it's the only thing in this box that wasn't magazines, and I thought, whose business card? What would this be? And I flip it over, and it's Dan Musselman's card from when he worked at Dove Audio. And I just stared at it, and my girlfriend and another friend of ours were over, and they were helping me go through my stuff, and they said, they just saw how still I was, and they said, what is it? And I said, it's my career.
Wow.
Yeah, so I framed it, and we got over here on the table behind us. I think when Dan retires, I'm gonna put it in a nice frame, maybe put it in acrylic and give it to him.
That's very neat. And so, as most of your work is, I know, is audiobooks.
Yes.
But you're not just sitting in your booth all day and being a hermit.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. Okay, you need to spend time there to actually get the words down on the tape, so to speak. But you're also doing many other things, writing and teaching and speaking at conferences, and so you're very proactive, I think.
Yeah, well, part of it is just, there's such a cliche. In America, they always talk about giving back to the industry. And it's become such a cliche that people kind of roll their eyes when you hear it. I do when I say it, but things are cliche for a reason. It's because they're true. Mm-hmm. And this industry's been very, very good to me. It's embraced me. It's given me a career. It's given me a home. Literally all the best things that I have in my life are because of audiobooks. So I'm passionate about speaking at conferences and talking about the industry. I think 36 or 37% of American people have listened to an audiobook, which is great. But there's at least 63% who haven't, and we want to expand the conversation. We want to get to know them. We want to expose the industry to them. So I go talk at conferences around the country, talking to librarians and whomever, and
it's one of the fastest growing sectors of production, isn't it?
Well, certainly, yeah. Of publishing, it's the fastest growing. Ebooks and audiobooks are really the only growing part of publishing at all. Print publishing has been slowly dwindling for a number of years now, but audiobooks are going great guns. But also from a voiceover perspective, from the perspective of people who want to break into the industry as a voice talent, audiobooks. Well, I think audiobooks and video games are the two fastest growing aspects of voiceover, categories of voiceover. So I want to help the new narrators who are coming in. I see it constantly. People come into the studio for our classes. I teach with Pat Fraley. And when they come in and they sit down for the first time, even if they're experienced behind the microphone, they're petrified. They give me that kind of deer caught in the headlights look, that kind of, what am I supposed to do now? How does this work? And it's really simple. It's like the quote from Alice in Wonderland: begin at the beginning, then go to the end, and stop.
Okay.
You go from chapter 1 to the end, and but people are nervous because they've never done it. So that's what we try to do.
They don't know the rhythm, and
exactly.
I'm thinking with the series of audiobooks I'm about to produce, how the heck am I going to juggle the technical side with the performance side?
Exactly.
That's something you get into a rhythm of course.
You do, and it happens through experience. I mean, if only there was a way to shortcut experience. If I could fake authenticity, I'd have it made.
You've quoted one Lloyd Webber. No, it was. It's another musical, but Starlight Express has the line. Well, had the line in the original production, which I saw in London. The sad thing about experience is that by the time you got it, it's just about all you've got.
That's true.
That was the Hellcast. Let's just draw everything together with two questions. First of all, what makes you, Scott Brick, good at audiobooks, and why is that your preferred genre? And do you have anything great coming up that you can share with us?
As for what makes me good, I kind of blush at that.
I know, it's a horrible question. I shouldn't ask it, but...
I think the reason that I've been really blessed to work so much is every time I work on a book, all I can think about is the context. Because you can go about this, and from doing voiceovers, you can read things very slavishly as they're written on the page, or you can try to understand the author's intent. And we don't change the words on the page, and yet you have to understand the context in which they're written in order to really bring it to life. And that's what I try to do in my readings. You can be slavish to punctuation, but if you did an entire book that way, you could very conceivably read everything wrong. For instance, the line could be read, "Who do you think you are, anyway?"
Yes, which
doesn't
make sense.
Exactly, it's technically correct, but in context, it makes no sense whatsoever.
And that was the thing that struck me downstairs when you showed me one of the scripts that you're working on right now, that you hadn't marked anything up on it, that you must be living the story.
I try to. Every narrator really needs to know the story, And I always tell people, for new narrators, you definitely have to read the book ahead of time. I will do it to an extent. I want to know what's happening in the story, and yet I want to be surprised the way they are. So I will make sure that if it's a whodunit, I know whodunit. But I want to make sure that every action that takes place in the book is something I can imagine myself doing as it's happening to me and be surprised by it and try to live through the experience.
So you're creating films in Hollywood in your mind.
Exactly.
Just not outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and the other part of my question was, what's coming up?
What's coming up? Well, actually, there's a lot of books I'm working on right now. I'm actually juggling 3 or 4 at the moment. But what really excites me the most is when I get done narrating, and I come up at the end of the day, and I start working on something that I've been writing for about a year now. I don't get to teach as often as I want to. So in order to make myself feel a little less guilty, I started writing a book called Narrating Audiobooks Brick by Brick. And it's how I do it. There's no right or wrong way to do it, from doing voiceover. There's only the way that we do it.
Yeah.
But I want to share the way that I do it in case it is in any way illustrative for students. And hopefully get rid of that deer caught in the headlights look. They wonder, they're scared because they don't know how it's done. I want to give them this to show them how it's done. So when they go in, they can be a bit more relaxed and just let the process flow. And again, maybe they take something that I do. I'm interviewing other narrators to ask how they do it as well. So maybe a new narrator gets something from me, and they get something from Barbara Rosenblatt and something else from John Lee. But then they go off and they find out what works best for them, and they do it their way.
And maybe it's a conglomerate of some or something totally new.
It would be nice.
Well, thanks so much for inviting us into your home, Scott.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.